As we approach the prospect of a Supreme Court including 5 justices who will vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, it is essential that we not forget the world as it existed before 1973. So let me bring you just a bit of that reality back to life. In the years leading up to Roe, more than 1 million women each year face the crisis of an unwanted and unplanned pregnancy, found it necessary to resort to illegal abortions. The vast majority of these women turned either to dangerous self-induced abortions or to the dark and often forbidding underworld of back alley abortions. Women who resorted to self-induced abortions typically relied on such methods as throwing themselves down a flight of stairs, or ingesting, douching with, or inserting into themselves a chilling variety of chemicals and toxins ranging from bleach to turpentine to gunpowder to whiskey. Knitting needles, crochet hooks, scissors, and coat hangers were among the tools commonly used by women who attempted to self-abort. Approximately 30% of all illegal abortions in the 1960s were self-induced. Women who sought abortions from back alley abortionists encountered similar horrors. To find someone to perform an illegal abortion, women often had to rely on tips from elevator operators, taxicab drivers, salesmen, and the like. Because of the clandestine nature of illegal abortions, the very process of finding someone to perform an abortion was often dangerous and terrifying. Women who sought back alley abortions were often blindfolded, driven to remote areas, and passed off to people they did not know and could not even see during the entire process. Such abortions were performed not only in secret offices and in cars, literally in back alleys. The vast majority of these abortions were performed either by persons with only limited medical training, such as physiotherapists and chiropractors, or by rank amateurs, including elevator operators, prostitutes, barbers, and unskilled laborers. In the 1960s, an average of more than 200 women died each year as a result of botched illegal abortions. The mortality rate for Black and Hispanic women was 12 times higher than the mortality rate for white women. In addition to those who died in the course of illegal abortions, many thousands more suffered serious illness or permanent injury. Because of the humiliation associated with having an illegal abortion, many women who suffered complications were reluctant to visit a doctor for treatment. The stories of women who suffered through this nightmare are legend. One woman recalled how a fellow college student who had an illegal abortion was too frightened to tell anyone that she had done so. She locked herself in the bathroom in her dorm and quietly bled to death. In another incident, a 28-year-old Geraldine Santoro bled to death on the floor of a Connecticut hotel room after she and her former lover attempted an abortion on their own. The former lover, who had no medical experience, used a textbook and some borrowed tools. When things went terribly wrong, he fled the scene, and Santoro died alone. This was the reality of life for 1 million women each year in the world before Roe v. Wade. Is this the world that we wish to return? What I have just read to you is a history of what life was like for women before abortion was legal. So let's be clear, no matter what kind of law you pass to outlaw abortions, women will continue to seek and have abortions. They will just seek risky measures to have them, measures that could easily result in their deaths. Any bill that outlaws or restricts a woman's right to choose, right to access abortion care, is a bill that is calling for the policies of forced birthing for women. Similar to what you see on the popular show, The Handmaid's Tale. The women of Georgia can clearly see what this bill is about. They know it's forced birthing, and they know that they don't pay taxes to send their legislators down here to legislate their reproductive rights away. So let's get down to the root of what anti-abortion bills are about And that is that government, which is still mostly male, does not trust women to make decisions about their own bodies. The women of Georgia are fully capable of making their own decisions, and we do not need your condescending bills that challenge our bodily autonomy. I had an abortion almost 20 years ago when I was a senior at the University of Florida. Now, my pregnancy was not the result of rape or incest, but abortion was the right decision for me. I do not regret my decision. I didn't regret it at the time. And almost 20 years later today, I do not regret my decision. And I am not scarred. I still do not regret my decision. It is time for government to simply do one thing: trust women. We might disagree on whether or not women should have the right to an abortion, but you cannot dispute the results of what has happened when governments have banned or restricted abortions. Now I'm going to talk to you about the consequences of El Salvador's abortion ban. And the reason I want to talk to you about this is because it's very similar to what would happen in Georgia if abortion was banned. In 1998, El Salvador passed a law banning abortion under all circumstances. Until that point, abortion was illegal except in cases involving risk to maternal life, severe fetal anomaly, and rape or incest. Since then, El Salvador has worked to enforce its ban, mounting an intensive effort to identify and prosecute those who violate the law. If we're hoping to understand what happens when abortion is banned, El Salvador is the perfect place to study. Regardless of whether one favors or opposes the abortion ban, it is vital that we assess the law's impact. A law cannot be justified merely because one likes its message. Even if you like the message of the law, it is valid only to the extent that it produces results that are consistent with its message. So what happened when abortion was outlawed in El Salvador? The evidence shows us that three things occurred. Number one, abortions remained commonplace and rates did not drop even though it was illegal. Doctors became involved in law enforcement. And number three, innocent women were accused and convicted of abortion-related crimes. These three systems, the black market, healthcare, and criminal justice, all yield measurable consequences of the ban on abortion. And as I explained below, in spite of the vast differences between El Salvador and the United States, there is good reason to expect that the United States would experience each of these three consequences were it to outlaw abortion. Abortions still happen. Perhaps the most surprising thing about banning abortion is what doesn't happen when abortion becomes a crime. Abortion does not go away. Indeed, the rates of abortion in countries with the most restrictive abortion laws are higher. This is true in El Salvador. By the Salvadorian government's own measure, there are tens of thousands of illegal abortions every year. Indeed, the rate of abortion in countries with restrictive abortion laws far exceeds that of countries with far more liberal laws, such as the United States. There is one thing we know for certain. Abortion doesn't simply go away when it is made illegal. Because abortions are illegal, it is hard to get a complete picture of how women obtain them in El Salvador. What is clear beyond a doubt is that the advent of abortion drugs has completely altered illegal abortion. Abortions used to be exclusively surgical procedures. Doctors would terminate pregnancies by opening the cervix and suctioning or scraping out the contents of the uterus. Women unable to find or afford a doctor to perform an illegal abortion might try bringing on a miscarriage themselves. For example, by inserting a sharp object into their uterus. Opening the cervix is enough to induce a miscarriage, although it carries with it high risk of excessive bleeding and infection. Historically, these so-called botched abortions provided the only proof of crime in illegal abortion. Coat hanger abortions, for example, were notorious in pre-Roe America, in part because they carried a high risk of perforating a woman's uterus, leaving behind the telltale sign that the woman had deliberately ended her pregnancy. Beginning in the 1990s with the advent of abortion drugs, illegal abortion became safer and harder to detect. Taken in the appropriate dose at the right point in pregnancy, the drug known as RU486 will safely end 98% of pregnancies. Side effects include excessive bleeding or incomplete abortion, but readily resolved by a visit to a doctor. Although they are not always safe or effective, especially when taken too late in pregnancy or at the wrong dose, compared with the risk of illegal surgical abortion drugs, RU486 have completely altered women's access to illegal abortion. In El Salvador and throughout Latin America, women find easy access to illegal abortion drugs via the internet. In Brazil, for example, when abortion is illegal except in cases of rape, threat to maternal life, or where the fetus lacks a brain, abortion drugs play a vital role in the thriving black market. An estimated 1 in 5 Brazilian women under the age of 40 has had an abortion. Even in a poor country like El Salvador, almost everyone has a smartphone, and provided that they have money and time, can go online to purchase the drugs that will end an unwanted pregnancy. To be sure, illegal abortion remains risky, whether they use drugs or other means to terminate their pregnancies. Many women experience complications from illegal abortion that necessitate medical attention. In Latin America, complications from illegal abortion constitute the leading cause of mortality in young women. The inevitability of such complications has led to the second concrete change set in motion by banning abortions. Doctors become entangled in the law enforcement process. If the first thing that happened when El Salvador banned abortion was the proliferation of illegal black market abortions, the second thing that happened was doctors were enlisted in the law enforcement effort. The overwhelming majority of abortion cases in El Salvador began in the hospital with a doctor's hunch that his or her patient had broken the law. In 1998, Salvadorian government officials charged with implementing the newly passed abortion ban reached out to doctors to encourage them to report patients they suspected of terminating their pregnancies. Dr. Guidos, former president of the El Salvadorian Association of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, described the state's approach. He told me, officials from the state prosecutor's office went to the hospitals, advising doctors that they had a legal obligation to report women suspected of terminating their pregnancies. And the hospital directors supported the obligation to report. They collaborated. The push to enlist doctors in enforcing the abortion law succeeded. A 2006 survey of practicing obstetricians found that more than half, 56% of respondents, reported having been involved in notifying legal authorities about a suspected unlawful abortion. Inevitably, a country seeking to enforce laws against abortion will seek doctors' collaboration. Women must turn to doctors when an illegal abortion goes wrong. Doctors are therefore in the best position to spot the crime.
1 minute left.
But there are serious problems with using doctors to enforce abortion laws. In reporting their patients, doctors break the law and violate the oldest of ethical principles, patient confidentiality. Furthermore, in the vast majority of cases, doctors cannot tell whether a woman has had an abortion or simply a miscarriage. Thus, their reports are based on hunches rather than on medical advice. The obligation of safeguarding a patient's secrets is ancient. For over 2,400 years, medical doctors have embraced the precepts articulated in the Hippocratic Oath, recited at medical school graduations worldwide. One of the oath's central tenets is the following pledge: whatever I see or hear in the lives of my patients, whether in connection with my professional practice or not, which ought not to be spoken of outside, I will keep secret, as considering all things should be private. The principle is based in part on policy considerations. Confidentiality is essential to creating a solid doctor-patient relationship, dedicated to promoting the health and life of the patient. Doctors routinely treat patients whom they suspect or even know to have broken the law. The medical profession has long been clear that its job is to heal rather than to work as agents of the police. In El Salvador, as in other countries, including the United States, the ethical obligation of confidentiality has been enacted into law. It is illegal to share patient information. A doctor who reveals her patient's medical information commits both a civil wrong, for which a patient might sue, and a crime, punishable by imprisonment and the suspension of the doctor's medical license. Regardless of these ethical and legal precepts, it is easy to understand why a doctor might struggle when encountering evidence of an illegal abortion. If you view abortion as the taking of a life, you might be willing to call the police, even if it means violating the norms and laws governing confidentiality. Salvadorian law supports such breaches of confidentiality by requiring doctors to report suspected crimes to the state. Because abortion is a criminal act, this requirement could be construed to mean that providers must report cases of unlawful abortion to police. Plainly, this was the interpretation of the Salvadorian officials meant to convey when they toured hospitals in 1998. Legally, though, they were wrong. The law explicitly excuses doctors from this duty when the information is acquired in the course of a confidential doctor-patient relationship. The law states that doctors, pharmacists, nurses, and other health professionals must report unlawful criminal acts that they become aware of in the context of their professional relationship, unless the information they acquire is protected under the terms of professional secrecy. There is no conflict under the law, then. Doctors are required to maintain patient confidentiality. Still, when the state sends prosecutors to inform hospital personnel,
the lady will leave the well. The lady will leave the well.